Welcome back. We're talking now about technology, career, and women today. Dr. Tracy Wilen is the author of 11 books and spent years as a leader in Silicon Valley. She's also a contributor to the Huffington Post and wrote about technology and women's leadership as a visiting scholar at Stanford. Tracy, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. What brings you to Portland?
I was here for Skanska, the construction company, and they had two professional groups, the women's professional group and the young professionals. Network groups, affinity groups, and I think it's great the company's supporting it. So I was here to talk about technology, gender, generation driving new forms of leadership.
You've written 11 books, and one of them was about how businesswomen can deal in or operate in Japan.
Yes.
So is that far different from how they need to operate here?
Well, some would say no. But I think, you know, that book was all about interviewing women on how to create success and doing business in Japan. And it was about competence and credibility, building your brand, and also having skills and experience, and it's the same here. Yeah,
right. So speaking of building your brand, we were talking off camera earlier about how people have to do that in this day and age because unlike our parents perhaps, we don't have that one job. People rebranded to different careers. We're seeing it with the politicians. We'll maybe get into that later. But for somebody going out on an interview, perhaps in a career they've never had before, I've got some do's and don'ts I want to talk about. So let's say you have an interview and it goes really well, and should you tweet out, say, "I killed it"?
No.
Bad idea on that one.
You know, don't assume you're a winner until you actually handed the job. There could be 3,000 other people who interviewed for that same job and may have tweeted out the same thing.
That I'm killing it, the same thing.
I'm killing it and I got the job.
Okay, so I assume don't send a friend request on Facebook to the person you did the interview with. Bad idea there?
I would send a LinkedIn request.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, that's the professional Rolodex.
Right. That makes sense. That makes good sense.
And with a thank you, an email.
Oh, interesting. So speaking of that, I mean, how often should you follow up an email? Should you do it frequently to check in on the status? I mean, by frequently, I don't mean like every hour unless you're applying for a job as a stalker. Which, but I mean, should you do that at all?
Yes, but ask. Ask when's the appropriate time for me to follow up with you. If you haven't heard from someone in about 10 to 14 days, then I would check in and just remind them that you had a great time visiting with them and learning about the company, and you just want to see your status.
And since we're here in Oregon and we now have legalized marijuana, is it inappropriate to ask about a company's drug policy?
You know, that wouldn't be the first thing I would talk about.
Probably not a good idea on that one. So let's talk about the branding and the rebranding. What does somebody have to do in this day and age? And this isn't just for women. You were telling me men, it applies to men as well.
Absolutely. You know, number one, we're living longer to 100. You're going to be working 50 to 70 years, which means you're probably going to have 11 to 16 jobs in your life.
That's scary.
You need to really take control of your brand and take control of your career. And this is for men and women alone. So number one is you got to understand what you like to do that you do well and get paid for. And bundle up your experience and skills and become that persona that you want to be, because that's got to fund you for life.
That can be hard for some people to do that, just to figure out what they want to do, especially for younger people. Let's talk politics a little bit because it's fascinating. I've seen you talk about how the candidates now are rebranding themselves because they have to. So Donald Trump, for example, or Carly Fiorina, they were successful business people. Now they want to be president, so they have a rebranding mission. How does that kind of cross over to everybody else?
You know, I think people should watch the debates and on all of them to understand this, because they spend a lot of money on communication and strategy to rebrand. If you watch it, yes, real estate, high tech, and a medical surgeon all rebranding themselves to be the biggest job in the United States, which is the president. And what they're doing is they're becoming the persona. They've already put themselves in the job and are showing how their experience makes them the best candidate for the job.
How are they doing?
They all have good points, and they've all had low points. As you know, it's playing out in front of us, and we can learn from it.
And so what do you see from them going forward? I mean, what is not anyone in particular, but is there something looking ahead that we can go, wow, Tracy told us that they're going to have to do this? Okay,
here's what I look at every debate. Look for the elevator pitch, which is the 30-second opening that each candidate gives. We do that in our interviews, 30 seconds, what makes you unique and special. Number two is playbooks. For every meeting that you have, and a playbook is strategy and a series of tactics. Have a playbook for each interview in each company that you're pursuing, and it should change depending on the situation. Just like Carly had one playbook for the small table and a different playbook for the big table.
You got for the big table. This is fascinating stuff, Tracy. Really appreciate your time. We could talk all night, but we got to go now, so we'll be back right after the break.